Good afternoon. This essay is a spin-off of a larger, longer nonfiction project that I started about 1.5 years ago. Started with a brief news article, imagine that, that I saw online. And for some reason, I just could not stop thinking about the woman who was the center of the story. So I decided to try to find out as much as I could about her. The invitation. Walking along the road that September Saturday on her way to commit suicide, Marie looked like a typical motorist who had simply run out of gas. She carried a red plastic 1-gallon container, newly purchased at the convenience store down the hill from her apartment. It was filled with gasoline and heavier than she expected. Marie, a small woman with graying hair, shifted the container from one hand to the other as she walked. At the convenience store, Marie had used a $50 bill to buy the $8.99 container and prepay for $2.27 in gas. A few minutes later, she went back inside. At the counter, she pulled out 2 $1 bills from her khaki capris and bought a Bic Classic lighter for $1.19. Closed circuit video, later entered into evidence, showed her at the counter, flicking the lighter to make sure it worked. I wish I could tell you more about Marie, but right now I know more about her death than her life. I wish I could tell you about her childhood, her family, her dreams, her loves, about her struggles with mental illness and homelessness. I wish I could tell you how she worked so hard to get better, how her support system, her safety net, church friends, therapists, case managers, doctors, kept her afloat, saved her time and again. At least 3 other times, Marie had harmed herself. Twice, she slit her wrist. Another time, she drank boric acid. In the end, her illnesses won out. Despite the kindness of others, despite the medications, despite her own resolve. They wore her down, wore her out. She grew tired of fighting. 2 college students found Marie's body the next day on a secluded running trail. After police confirmed her identity, officers went to Marie's apartment. Before she left that last time, she had tidied up. Several belongings were in bags, others arranged neatly. The bed had been stripped. An officer wrote in his report, "It appeared everything was organized on the main table, and there was a suicide hotline card in plain view in the center. It should also be noted that Marie had numerous valuables and money out in plain view, and they were not disturbed." There were 6 new messages on Marie's answering machine. The officer listened. They were all from the previous 2 days. He wrote, a few of the messages alluded to Marie struggling with suicidal thoughts. Marie's family was notified, a son, a niece, and a cousin, all in other states. The police wouldn't release Marie's name, saying only that she was a woman in her 50s with a history of mental illness. The local media reported on Marie's death, emphasizing that it was not a homicide. And that was that. Except to the small circle of people who knew her and cared for her, Marie became invisible again. Marie, she was 57, wore her graying hair in tiny braids and attended a Wednesday night church group. Marie became as invisible as she was years ago when she was homeless. As invisible as she was when she walked her neighborhood on the day before her death and didn't look quite right. All evidence of Marie's existence was filed away in hospital and social service agency records, in police and medical examiner databases. Out of sight, forgotten. One of the paramedics at the scene where Marie's body was found told me later, "It makes you stop for a second and wonder what's going on in a person's life that would make them want to do that. You want to know a little bit. You wonder what's going on." With Marie, we may never know. Suicide carries such a stigma that a family's path of least resistance to least pain often is silence. That's the path Marie's family has chosen, to protect her elderly mother who knows Marie is dead, but not how she died. Would it do any good to know Marie's story? To learn of her childhood, to know what made her happy, to know how she made others happy? Would knowing her story help us reach out to a loved one who's hurting, who may be contemplating suicide? A crisis intervention specialist I spoke with said that in any given 2-week period, 1 in every 20 adults has suicidal thoughts. 95% don't go through with it. But some give a signal that something is wrong. They may drive drunk, engage in risky sex, mix drugs with alcohol. It's an invitation, she said, and they want you to respond. They're looking for an RSVP. So how should we respond to that invitation? Her answer? Kindly say, "This isn't the you I've known." The myth, she said, is that if you ask someone if they're thinking of committing suicide, it will push them to go through with it. Not so. Asking will only make it better, the specialist told me. It really is everybody's business. It affects everyone. Suicide rates in the US have increased significantly since 2006, she said, and research shows that each one intimately affects at least 6 people. That number can reach into the millions, as was the case with comedian Robin Williams, who, she said, brought joy to so many people. Which brings us back to Marie, whose death affected far more than 6 people. How many, I wonder, were affected by Marie's life? How many people did she bring joy to? Tell Marie's story, the specialist urged me. Please tell her story. But a story that starts at the end and doesn't work its way back to the beginning is unfinished, incomplete. We know how Marie's story ends, but we have to fill in the rest. Those empty spaces where we have to imagine how hard her life must have been, and at times how joyful. If we do that work, and if we do it well, we may see Marie and others who are hurting, who feel invisible, who may be giving us a signal. And we will say to them kindly, "This isn't the you I've known." Thank you.